November 14, 1938. A basement speakeasy on 127th Street, Harlem. The room holds 47 people. Businessmen, hustlers, women in silk dresses catching cigarette smoke in their pearls. And at the center table, Ellsworth Raymond Johnson, the man they call Bumpy. At his right shoulder stands Clarence Jelly Thompson, 6'4", 240 pounds, Bumpy's shadow, his human shield. The man who has stopped 3 assassination attempts with his bare hands. Tonight, Jelly will not stop the 4th. In exactly 11 minutes, a gunman will walk through that door. He will raise a .38 caliber revolver. He will fire point blank into Jelly Thompson's chest, right there, in front of everyone. But here is what the history books have buried for 80 years. Of the 47 people in that room, only 3 survived to describe what happened next. What occurred in the following 90 seconds would either cement Bumpy Johnson as the untouchable king of Harlem, or expose him as a man who could bleed. To understand why this moment mattered, why this single gunshot would echo through organized crime for decades, you must first understand what Harlem had become. By 1938, Harlem was the nerve center of Black America. Its streets pulsed with jazz, numbers running, and a shadow economy worth an estimated $12 million annually. And every single dollar, every bet placed, every bottle poured, every protection payment collected, flowed through one man's hands, Bumpy Johnson. But Bumpy did not hold Harlem through brutality alone. He held it through calculation, through alliances, through a careful understanding that violence was not a tool of power, it was a symptom of its absence. The problem was Dutch Schultz. Schultz, born Arthur Flegenheimer, was the most volatile gangster in American history, a man who would order executions over perceived slights, a man who saw Harlem's wealth and decided, simply, that it should be his. For 5 years, Schultz had been pushing into Harlem. His lieutenants squeezed the numbers bankers. His enforcers beat independent operators into submission. And when Bumpy Johnson rose to resist him, Schultz made his intentions clear. "The bump has to go," he reportedly told associates. "Every man close to him, their families. We don't leave witnesses." But Schultz was killed in 1935, gunned down in a Newark chop house on orders from the commission itself. And for 3 years, Bumpy believed the threat had died with him. He was wrong. What Bumpy didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that Schultz's organization hadn't collapsed. It had simply gone underground. And on that November night in 1938, what remained of Schultz's machine was about to strike back. But the assassin wasn't coming for Bumpy. He was coming for the one man Bumpy couldn't afford to lose. To understand Jelly Thompson, you must understand what it meant to be Bumpy Johnson's bodyguard. Clarence Thompson earned his nickname from the way he moved, smooth, fluid, like he was sliding through water. He had been a boxer in the early 30s, a middleweight with fast hands and an iron jaw. But boxing didn't pay. Not for a black man in Depression-era America. Not unless you were willing to take dives. Jelly wasn't willing. He met Bumpy in 1934 outside a policy bank on Lenox Avenue. 2 of Schultz's collectors had cornered the bank's owner, a small man named Percy Williams, and were making demands. Thompson happened to be walking by. What happened next entered Harlem legend. Thompson put both men in the hospital, one with a broken jaw, the other with a collapsed lung. He didn't take a single punch. Bumpy Johnson, who had watched the entire altercation from a parked car across the street, stepped out, walked directly to Thompson and said 5 words. "You work for me now." From that day forward, Jelly Thompson never left Bumpy's side. He stood behind him at meetings. He slept in the hallway outside his apartment. He tasted his food. He screened his visitors. He was not simply protection. He was proof. Proof that to touch Bumpy Johnson was to face consequences too terrible to contemplate. But what made Thompson valuable was not just his size or his skill. It was his intelligence. 3 times in 4 years, Thompson had identified threats before they materialized. The first was a waiter at the Cotton Club who had been paid $500 to put cyanide in Bumpy's bourbon. Thompson noticed the man's hands shaking, just slightly, and intercepted the drink. The second was a delivery driver who had hidden a shotgun beneath loaves of bread. Thompson spotted the outline. The third was a woman, beautiful, well-dressed, seemingly innocent, who had positioned herself at a bar where Bumpy conducted business. Thompson saw the bulge at her ankle and found a .22 caliber Derringer strapped to her calf. Each time the threat was neutralized quietly. Each time Bumpy's legend grew, and each time Jelly Thompson became more essential. But here is what the enemies of Bumpy Johnson understood. Remove the shield, and the king becomes vulnerable. By late 1938, what remained of the Schultz organization had been absorbed into a faction led by a man named Vincent Call Di Stefano. Not to be confused with the infamous Mad Dog Call, Di Stefano was a distant cousin who had inherited the nickname and the grudge. Di Stefano had spent 3 years rebuilding, recruiting, waiting, and now he had a plan. The speakeasy on 127th Street was called the Savoy Cellar, a basement operation beneath a legitimate barbershop. It was known for 3 things: excellent whiskey, high-stakes card games, and the fact that Bumpy Johnson visited every second Tuesday of the month. Di Stefano had a man on the inside, a bartender named Solomon Graves, and for 6 weeks Graves had been reporting back. When Bumpy arrived, where he sat, how many men accompanied him, and most importantly where Jelly Thompson positioned himself. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Di Stefano would send 1 shooter, not for Bumpy, security around him was too tight, but for Thompson. Kill the bodyguard, create chaos, and in the confusion, a second team waiting outside would move in to finish the job. It should have worked. But what Di Stefano didn't know, what changed everything, was that Bumpy Johnson had his own source inside Di Stefano's operation. And 48 hours before the attack, Bumpy received a warning. He went to the Savoy Cellar anyway. The question, of course, is why? Why would Bumpy Johnson, a man who had survived 15 years in one of the most dangerous professions in America, walk into a trap he knew was waiting? There are 3 theories. The first is pride. That Bumpy believed he could handle anything Di Stefano sent his way. That running would signal weakness. The second is strategy. That Bumpy intended to use the attack as a pretext for war, to draw out his enemies and destroy them decisively. But the third theory, the one supported by the few surviving witnesses, is more troubling. Bumpy went because Jelly insisted. According to Lucille Broadnax, a hostess who survived that night, Thompson learned of the threat and demanded to proceed as planned. "Let them come," he reportedly said. "Let them try." Thompson believed he could identify the shooter before he struck. He believed he could stop what was coming. He was half right. November 14, 1938, 9:47 p.m. Bumpy Johnson's car, a black Packard 12, pulls to the curb on 127th Street. The driver stays behind the wheel. 2 men exit first, scanning the street. Then Bumpy emerges, wearing a charcoal gray overcoat and a fedora tilted at precisely the angle he favors. Behind him, Jelly Thompson unfolds from the vehicle. They descend the stairs into the Savoy Cellar. Inside, the room is warm. Too warm. 47 people occupy a space designed for 30. Cigarette smoke hangs in blue layers. A pianist plays something slow, something mournful. Glasses clink. Conversations murmur. Bumpy moves to his usual table, the one in the corner, back to the wall. Thompson takes his position at the right shoulder. From here he can see both entrances, the bar, the kitchen door. Solomon Graves, the bartender, pours Bumpy's drink. His hands are steady. He has rehearsed this moment. 3 minutes later, he excuses himself to the back room. The door at the top of the stairs opens. A man descends, mid-30s, medium build, wearing a brown suit and a newsboy cap pulled low. His right hand hangs at his side, unnaturally still. Jelly Thompson sees him immediately. Thompson's eyes track the newcomer as he crosses the room. Something is wrong. The man isn't looking at anyone. He isn't ordering a drink. He isn't greeting friends. He is walking with purpose, directly toward the corner table. Thompson leans down to Bumpy's ear, whispers something. Bumpy does not look up. He simply says, "I know." The room continues its chatter. The piano resumes. No one notices the shift in atmosphere at the corner table, 20 feet. The man in the brown suit passes a group of women. One of them, Lucille Broadnax, will later testify that she felt a chill as he walked by. "Like death was walking," she said. 15 feet. Thompson shifts his weight. His hand moves toward his waist, toward the .45 he carries in a shoulder holster. But he stops. Drawing now would cause panic, would turn the room into chaos before he knew the threat was real. 10 feet. The man raises his head. His eyes lock with Thompson's. And in that moment, in the space of a single heartbeat, both men understand what is about to happen. The shooter's hand comes up. Thompson moves first. He lunges forward, putting himself between Bumpy and the gun just as the first shot fires. The bullet enters Thompson's chest 3 inches below the left collarbone. The impact throws him backward. He staggers, but does not fall. The second shot hits his shoulder. He still doesn't fall. What happens next unfolds in approximately 4 seconds. Thompson, with 2 bullets in his body, charges. He covers the remaining 6 feet between himself and the shooter before a third shot can be fired. His massive hands close around the man's throat. They crash into a table. Glass shatters. Women scream. The crowd stampedes toward the exits. The shooter fires again, blindly now. The bullet goes wide, striking a brass lamp fixture, and then Bumpy Johnson stands. He does not run. He does not draw his weapon. He walks slowly toward the 2 struggling men. Thompson has the shooter pinned to the ground. Blood is spreading across his shirt, a dark, terrible stain, but his grip does not weaken. Bumpy reaches them. He kneels. He looks directly into the shooter's eyes. "Who sent you?" The man spits blood, says nothing. Bumpy's voice drops. "You have 3 seconds to answer before my friend here crushes your windpipe. He's dying anyway. He has nothing to lose." The shooter breaks. "Di Stefano," he gasps. The second team, outside, 3 men. Bumpy straightens, turns to his surviving guards. "Kill them." The guards disappear up the stairs. On the floor, Jelly Thompson's grip finally loosens. He rolls onto his back, breathing in shallow, wet gasps. Blood pools beneath him. Bumpy kneels beside him. What passes between them in that moment, no witness could hear. But Lucille Broadnax, hiding beneath an overturned table, saw Bumpy Johnson's face. She said it was the only time she ever saw him cry. The next 90 seconds determined who lived and who died. When the police arrived, attracted by the gunfire, they found the Savoy Cellar in ruins. Tables overturned, glass everywhere, blood on the floor. Jelly Thompson was still alive, barely. He would die 3 hours later at Harlem Hospital, having never regained consciousness. The shooter, later identified as Marcus Trent, a low-level enforcer for Di Stefano, was found with a crushed windpipe. He died at the scene. Of the 47 people in the room, 12 suffered injuries in the stampede. 4 were struck by stray bullets. 1, a policy banker named Raymond Lucas, died of a heart attack during the chaos. But here is the detail that made this night legendary. When detectives canvassed witnesses, they found that 44 of the 47 people present claimed to have seen nothing. They had been in the bathroom. They had been looking the other way. They had arrived after the shooting. Their stories were identical because they had been told what to say. Only 3 witnesses gave actual testimony. Lucille Broadnax, who was too traumatized to stay silent. A dishwasher named Thomas Keene, who was new to Harlem and didn't understand the rules. And Solomon Graves, the bartender who had betrayed Bumpy, who was found by police hiding in a supply closet. Graves' testimony should have destroyed Bumpy Johnson. Instead, it destroyed Graves. Within 72 hours, everything changed. Vincent Di Stefano's organization ceased to exist. 3 men were found dead in an alley behind a warehouse in the Bronx. the second team that had waited outside the Savoy. Di Stefano himself vanished. His body was never recovered, though persistent rumors placed him in the foundation of a housing project built in 1941. Solomon Graves, the informant, was offered police protection. He declined, a decision he survived exactly 11 days. His death was ruled a suicide, though the coroner noted that shooting oneself 3 times in the back of the head was physiologically improbable. But it was what happened publicly that secured Bumpy's legend. Jelly Thompson's funeral drew over 3,000 people. It shut down Lenox Avenue for 6 blocks. The coffin was carried by 8 men who had served under Bumpy, each one a killer in his own right. And at the graveside, Bumpy Johnson delivered a eulogy that would be remembered for decades. He did not speak of violence. He did not speak of revenge. He spoke of loyalty. "Clarence Thompson gave his life so that I might live," he said. "There is no greater love than this, to stand between a bullet and a friend. For as long as I breathe, his name will be remembered. His family will be protected. His sacrifice will mean something." This is the moment that transformed Bumpy Johnson from gangster to legend. Not the violence that followed, not the bodies that accumulated in his wake, but the image of a man who honored his dead, who treated loyalty as sacred. Bumpy Johnson would rule Harlem for another 30 years. He survived the purges of the 1940s, the committee hearings of the 1950s, the rise of the heroin trade in the 1960s. When he finally died, of a heart attack in 1968 at a restaurant on 125th Street, he was the longest-reigning crime boss in American history. But those who knew him said he was never the same after Jelly Thompson. He became more cautious, more methodical, more ruthless in protecting those close to him. He also became, paradoxically, more generous. He paid for Thompson's children's education. He supported Thompson's widow until her death in 1977. Every year on November 14th, he visited Thompson's grave, alone, without security, for exactly 1 hour. The lesson of that night was not lost on those who observed it. In the world Bumpy Johnson inhabited, violence was inevitable. Betrayal was constant. Death waited at every doorway. The only currency that mattered, the only thing that separated the survivors from the casualties, was loyalty. Di Stefano had tried to break Bumpy by removing his protection. Instead, he had proven why that protection was unbreakable. Jelly Thompson did not die because Bumpy ordered him to. He died because he chose to, because the bond between them was worth more than his own survival. That is not something you can manufacture, not something you can buy, and as Di Stefano discovered, not something you can defeat. There is a tendency, when we discuss figures like Bumpy Johnson, to either glorify or condemn, to treat them as either romantic outlaws or irredeemable monsters. The truth, as always, is more complicated. Bumpy Johnson was a product of his time, of a system that offered Black Americans few paths to power, fewer paths to wealth, and almost no paths to respect. He carved his own road through that landscape, leaving wreckage in his wake. He was not a hero, but he understood something that transcends morality, that the men who survive are not always the strongest, not always the most violent, not always the most cunning. They are the men who inspire others to die for them. This is one of 30 untold stories from the reign of Bumpy Johnson. The next one reveals how he made peace with the Italian Commission and what he demanded in return. If you've made it this far, you understand what we're building here. A complete history of an underground empire told one chapter at a time. Jelly Thompson was buried in Woodlawn Cemetery. His headstone reads simply, "Faithful unto death." Bumpy Johnson visited that grave for 30 years. Some debts cannot be repaid, only honored.